Welcome to Me Reimagined, a space where we step into the impossible version of ourselves, a version we only dream of, so we can create lives we love and the impact we are meant to make.
Hi there, I'm Eden, and welcome back to the Me Reimagined podcasts. Today, I am beyond excited to introduce our guest, Zoe Noble, the founder of We Are Childfree. If you're not already following her work, you are in for such a treat. Zoe has created an incredibly empowering space for women who are redefining what fulfillment looks like outside of motherhood. What I love about Zoe's work is that, just like Me Reimagined, it's all about creating a life that feels right for you, breaking free from expectations and really owning your choices in life. So, whether that means embracing a child free life or redefining success in other ways, I hope today's conversation reminds you that you get to decide what path you tread in life. In this episode, we dive into Zoe's personal journey, the evolution of her child free movement, and the mindset shifts that help women feel truly enough without needing to justify their choices. We also explore what it takes to build a life of freedom, purpose, and joy on your own terms. I also just wanted to mention that we had a few connection hiccups towards the end of our chat, so we weren't able to include everything Zoe shared about We Are Childfree. But if this conversation resonated with you and you want to dive deeper into the work Zoe is doing, definitely check out wearechildfree.com. There you can learn more about their community and sign up for their newsletter. And of course, you can follow them on Instagram at wearechildfree_, for even more inspiration and stories. Oh, and one more thing. Zoe and her team recently got a book deal. I cannot wait to order it when it comes out, and I'll be sure to share more when it's released. I love this conversation so much. Zoe is such an amazing person, and I cannot wait for you to hear it. So let's just jump right into the interview. Zoe, welcome to the Me Reimagined podcast. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We are super excited to have you on board with us today. Me Reimagined is all about creating extraordinary lives for women. And I know that we have so much to talk about because you are leading a movement called Child Free that helps support women and help them in their choice of being child free. I know that we're going to have a super interesting conversation today. But before we dive into all of the topics and all of the things that go into making that choice, perhaps you can tell the listeners a little bit about who you are and what your mission is.
Sure thing. So my name is Zoe Noble. I'm the founder of We Are Childfree, which began in 2017, which actually was a really small portrait series. I'm a photographer by trade for the last 12, 13 years. And I have always known I didn't want children, but I've had to face so many unwelcome questions and pressure from strangers, from medical professionals. And in my kind of mid-30s, I just reached a breaking point of wanting to change the narrative, wanting to do something about it. So I picked up my camera and I put a blog post out asking if there were any other women who didn't want children, because at that time I didn't actually know anyone. I really had been alone in this decision for a long, long time. I didn't know the word child free. So it was very isolating. And actually, I got 40 women replying back to me, which was a revelation to know that I wasn't the only one who felt this way. And taking their portraits and sharing their stories, it was life-changing because I realized I'm not alone. There's nothing wrong with me. We are just living a different path. And from that time, the project grew. It kind of snowballed. And after it was featured in the New York Times, I started to get thousands of messages from people all over the world saying they finally felt seen. They finally knew there was nothing wrong with them. And I knew I just had to keep going. If this was impacting people this much, I knew I just had to keep going and keep trying to find more people, connecting us all together. And it's really grown into this global movement and community now that is helping people without children to live their lives, know that they can be happy and fulfilled, and creating a supportive, safe space for them to connect as well.
Hmm. Yeah, that is really beautiful, and I've been following you for a few years, and I'm also someone who's chosen to be child free and have made that decision for myself. I can relate to a lot of the things that you're saying and sort of the responses that you are often faced with, right?
Mm.
Maybe in yourself you are confident in your choice, but people will ask you things like, "Well, what when you get older? What are you going to do then?" And what are you gonna do without children? What was that decision like for you? You say that you knew quite early, I think, but what was that process for you and how did that feel to make that choice?
For me, it was honestly really a non-decision. I feel like I never had the thoughts in my head of I might even want to have children. It was something that I very rarely thought about, only when someone would ask me. So I would have, people who would say, like, oh, when I got married, for example, the questions came more intensely, and it was, when are you going to start having kids? And really, I was still so unsure about how to deal with other people's reactions, because the way that we're depicted in the media, in our culture, is very negative. So it was almost like I was very scared about how people were going to react to my response of saying, I just don't want them. So I ended up being, oh, I'm not so sure now, maybe one day, and knowing full well that that really wasn't something I wanted. So for my 20s and my early 30s, I was just really lacking in that confidence to just own it. And I feel very grateful that I always knew really that I didn't see myself as a mother. I didn't want to have that role looking after a child. I knew that I wanted to nurture in different ways. And I see my creative projects that I've worked on as my way of doing that nurturing. And this project, We Are Childfree, it's like that is my baby. And it's not just helping one person, it's helping thousands of people. So my road to this decision or non-decision was a lot simpler than many people, which I am very, very grateful for. And I met my husband James when I was quite young, in my early 20s. We have been together now 23 years, and for most of that time we never even spoke about having kids, and that tells me it was just such a non-decision for us. We didn't feel like anything was missing in our life, and we were just living our life. And I recognize there's a privilege in that experience, because running this project, most people sadly face a lot of confusion and uncertainty, lacking, that clarity of what do they actually desire. So yes, my path was a lot easier.
Yeah. Similarly to you, for me it's always felt like a non-decision. I think I knew from a very young age, and when I stated that fact, I was always met with, "Oh, you'll change your mind," or you'll come to your senses, and those kind of narratives.
Right.
But looking into
Mm,
your community, so it sounds like for you, perhaps it wasn't a very emotional decision. But what
right.
journey do you typically see people in your community go through?
So I would say the majority of the community is child free by choice. Women like me, who have really always known they didn't want children, but they have faced intense pressure, societal expectations, whether from their family, from their partner, from the world around them. And even though they've known they didn't want children, it's like they have had to battle with, is this the right thing for me? Should I really do this? Will I regret it? Because like you said, lots of the statements that are just thrown out at us can really make you question, am I doing the right thing? Is this where I really will be happy and fulfilled? Because everyone, even loved ones, are telling me I'll regret it. I'll be alone when I'm older. And I feel like that's a lot of people's journey, is trying to really embrace, like, they know who they are. And women, sadly, we're raised to not trust our own voice and to trust our gut. And it's a lot of kind of deciphering what, I can trust my own decision and not listen to everyone else. But we live in a pronatalist world, and that tells everyone you will want and you will have children. And that's a lot of pressure for people to go through. And that, I think, is the majority of people in the community. But doing this kind of a project and listening to thousands of people's stories, you realize there's a lot of diversity in there as well. You know, people have made this decision or haven't made this decision for a myriad of reasons and experiences. And we can often be painted as one person in the media, especially. You know, there's a lot of articles we'll be hearing, we're called childless cat ladies, and we're all rich and jet setting around the world, and we're, you know, career obsessed, all of these like tropes. And actually doing the project, I recognize how diverse we are inside of this movement. And that was why it's so important for me to create a space where all of our voices can be heard. There is no one way to be child free. If you do not want to have children, if you can't have children, if you're not sure if you want them or you don't want them, this is a space that can just help you try and navigate that journey. And I'm really proud that We Are Childfree has always been this kind of inclusive space for people, because humans are not binary. We're not all the same. And that is one thing that we often are painted as, you know, by patriarchy, pronatalism. Women are all the same. We all want kids. We all we all want the same things in life. And the reality is that that is just not true.
What do you think are the mindset shifts or the internal skills that helps women make this decision or change from checking the boxes to that focus, or listening to what people outside of them are telling them to do? What are the things that help them to sort of listen to their own gut, listen to their own intuition?
I mean, firstly, recognizing the systems that are in place right now, which is pronatalism and patriarchy. And those systems are there to make you conform and to fit inside of a box that it thinks is the ideal. So when you understand that you're in a world that is ran like that, you can start to realize that, oh yes, when people say these things to me, like you'll change your mind, you'll regret it, they've just been conditioned to reel off these statements without really thinking about it. And it makes me understand the way people and the world is reacting to me stepping off a very standard life script, which is you find the partner or you're chosen by your partner, you have kids, you know, have the career, get the house, all of these things, and then you die surrounded by your loved ones. And that is the, you know, the vision that we're all sold from a very young age. And when you realize that that is something that's sold to you, it's not actually the reality unless you want it to be, unless you create it, unless you have luck. So yes, I think understanding first how the world is makes you realize how you can navigate it more easily. So that's the system that we live in. And next, we have to then decipher what is internal pressures or feelings or emotions and what is the external pressures, and really trying to drill down into where are these feelings and emotions coming from. Because actually, when you work out that a lot of the feelings that you have about your decision, your life, it's actually coming from societal expectations and people around you telling you you're doing it wrong. And when you realize that actually, I feel anxious when I think about being a mother, or I feel worried, or I don't feel like I would be happy. All of those feelings are actually your gut telling you all of those worries and concerns. They need to be listened to, because you have to really explore that and not ignore them. Sadly, a lot of people ignore those fears and worries and concerns. And that's when we get unhappy parents and unhappy children and an unhappy society. So it's important to live intentionally. It's important to really work out what matters to each of us. There is no one set path for everyone. That is something that society is going to tell you is true, but it's not true. And we need to each of us work out what truly gives us the meaning and the joy and move in that direction. And if I don't feel like my joy and my happiness would come from having children or being a mother or a parent or anything, I have to listen to that and say, I don't feel like that is actually the right direction I should be going in. Doesn't mean we can't change. People grow, people change. But where I am right now and how I feel about my decision right now, if I feel anxious, upset, worried, then listen to that.
Yeah, that is so true. And the proverbial boxes that we all check, whether it is kids or it is jobs or it is relationships, they're really hard to step out of if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what your values are.
Yes.
It becomes very challenging, but it's when you actually have the courage to do that and do the inner work and actually figure out what is right for you that things start to feel better and your life flows better. Yeah, I would
Absolutely.
definitely agree with that. So one of the things that I've personally gone through related to this choice, which I've always been very clear on, is I had a feeling that because I chose not to have children, I had to do something spectacular with my life. I had to accomplish something big. I had to sort of make up for the fact that I didn't have children. Is that something you have grappled with as well?
I mean, for sure. I think because I am raised the same way that every other woman is pretty much raised in a patriarchy, in a pronatalist world, and that is telling us if we don't have kids, we better have something else damn good to spend our time on, and you better be rich. You better be doing some high flying career. I mean, it'll never compete with having a child, but that is the message that we're told, and the reality is that is absolutely not true. I speak to so many people who they've made this decision because it's actually allowed them the quiet, small freedoms that they need in their lives to focus on themselves, to focus on, their well-being, their health, their mental health, all of these things, which are really, really important. And that is more important than you trying to do something special in your life. I think because we also live in a world that is capitalist. Again, our worth is meant to come from either having the big house, lots of money, the big careers. So it's really difficult when you are not doing the thing that the world tells you is the most valuable thing as a woman, especially. And then you say, I actually just want to have a nice, quiet life where I can walk my dogs on the weekends. I can read my books. Maybe I can, take some time out when I want to have that flexibility. People really struggle with that concept because we just tell people that we have to, if we're not producing children, then we have to be producing something else. So I myself, I feel like, but when I never really thought I need to do something else. Obviously, I still grapple with this idea of where is my worth coming from and my value coming from. And it's taken years for me to deprogram myself, let go of all of those expectations. And this is why now I am living in a camper van with my husband, traveling around, working on this project. And before I did this project, I was a commercial photographer. I worked for Vogue, L'Oreal, all of these high flying big companies and brands, but I felt empty inside. And when I actually drilled down to my values, I realized that what my values were I loved lifting women up. I loved helping people. And I was working in an industry that was selling them more stuff, making women feel terrible in the beauty industry that I would shoot, photo shoots for. And I realized I was doing this job, this like high flying career, because I felt like that's what I'm meant to do. And I got into my later 30s, started working on this project, and it all started to click in place. And I really understood where my value comes from is I feel good when I help people, and especially when I help women know that they are worth so much just themselves, without children, without careers, without all of the trappings that patriarchy and capitalism says we need. We have so much inside of ourselves already. So that was like a revelation to me, and that's exactly why I'm in this camper van and living a small, I'm not sure simple life because sometimes it can be very complicated in a van, but but it's a massive change. It's a massive shift from what I was doing, 3, 4, 5 years ago for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, I can very much relate to what you're saying. I was also in a job for many years that didn't fulfill me, and it took me years to work up the courage to leave that. I went traveling. I bought a tiny home, so I know a little bit of the experience that you're you're having at the moment.
Yes.
But yeah, to make those decisions over time that help you step out of those boxes and actually make decisions that are aligned with what you really want. It feels very different. It feels so much more empowering and free.
Mm.
And I'm curious to hear, because it sounds like that is definitely the experience that you also are having. But I'd love to hear what you see inside of your community when women are able to have that mindset shift, when it sort of clicks for them and they're able to step into, their real, their true story. What changes for them? What does that look like?
I mean, everything changes for them because when you are raised to, prioritize other people's comfort over your own, you are living someone else's life, basically. And when you realize that actually you deserve to live your life however you want to live it, you don't owe anyone anything. You don't need to produce anything. Like, we are enough just as we are. It changes your whole mindset, your whole outlook on where you can find that joy and that meaning. You don't need to find that joy or meaning in a partner. You don't need to have the trappings of a big house or a big career. Like, you can find it inside yourself. You can find it in many, many ways in your community, with your friends. You don't need to be chosen by anyone. You don't need to lower your standards. So it changes everything, it's like stepping
Mm.
outside of the matrix. It's eye-opening and ground shifting. It just changes everything. When I see women doing it and they are finally ridding themselves of that kind of pressure and those expectations, they're not in relationships that are hurting them anymore. They're not lowering their standards to be chosen. They are moving away from careers that they don't feel fulfilled in. They're working on the stuff that actually matters to them. And I mean, that's life changing, really. So it's incredible and wonderful to see it. And it's the reason why I do this. It's the reason why I share the stories and the portraits, because I want women to be empowered to see that there are many ways that you can live your life. You can be, solo. You can have incredible friendships. You can build community, travel, not travel. Like, there's so many amazing stories that we have shared, especially from older women. That's the other thing that we haven't had a lot of, is seeing older women without children and seeing them in a positive light, and the lives that people create after they have that awakening and they truly start to like own it and step into like who they are, which is what I finally started doing, only really a few years ago. It just changes everything, which is incredible.
Hmm. Mindset shifts can take years to materialize, or they can take a moment, right? What are some of the tools or processes or resources that you have used to shift your mindset?
I really find those role models in my life who I can look up to. Most of the role models that I have are normal women who are living life on their terms. And I either fill my social media feeds with women like that, or I make sure that I'm speaking with my friends who are like that. And I just make sure I'm soaking up all of their strength. Because when I know that there are so many others out there who are, standing in their truth, and they're not going to be cowed, and they're not going to conform just because they're told they need to, that gives me strength. Other things, like I found journaling has helped a lot, really exploring my emotions and my feelings around things that happen in my life, and really trying to not just live on autopilot, which is what society wants us to do. It wants us to just be on autopilot and not ask questions, have kids, get married, have the house, get the career. And then actually, when you start to look at how everything is set up and really ask, do I want this? Like, do I really want this? Is this what I want my life to look like? If it is, brilliant, go for it. But if it's not, then that's okay too. So really looking at what were my values, and when I drilled into like what are the things that mattered to me, and I found that out by thinking about, where do I find my joy? Where are the moments where I lose track of time? What's my proudest achievements? And I've been published in Vogue, and my proudest achievement is working on We Are Childfree and having someone message me saying they finally feel seen. So that told me there is no point going down this route if I do not think that is actually where I feel that joy. I am just doing what society is telling me to do. If I'm trying to be this big photographer, that's not going to make me happy in the end. And it wasn't inside. And now I can see it, because when you get out of something, you can look back and go, wow, how did I miss all that? So find those values, really dig into them, and live your life according to your values. And now any project that comes my way, any situation that I want to be involved in, I always look at my values and go, is this something that aligns with them? Because if it doesn't align with them, I pretty much know, if I am not aligning myself with my values and doing things aligned with my values, that is going to bite me on the ass in the future. And it's happened so many times when I've taken on projects, work, when I've done jobs, when I've done anything and it did not align with those values. Later down the road, I was like, oh, I don't like this. Why am I doing this? I wish I hadn't got involved in this. And sure enough, it was not aligned with me. So I really feel like every person should just work out those values and keep walking in that path. They're kind of like your guiding stars. They are there to guide you on the path that you have. And I think that's a really, it's a really nice way to think about what matters to you. So that really helped me.
I love that. What is an extraordinary life for Zoe Noble? And what are the building blocks for the extraordinary life?
Really, to just be able to spend my days doing something that I love and helping someone else. I've just always really found that joy in helping someone else, and helping women especially. And in a dream world, it would be working on this project for the rest of my life to empower women to know that they're going to have just as wonderful a life. If they don't have kids, if they do, they can create whatever life they want if they have that support. And this project, I believe, is that support that many people, need in their life. So for me, yeah, seeing a different sunrise. I mean, living in a camper van, we've been doing this now for the last year. And while it has its challenges, nothing beats waking up and seeing the most incredible sunrises I have ever seen, and in a different place every few days. As a photographer, it's like my happy place, being able to step outside of this van with my camera and go off and just spend, an hour photographing some incredible places and people as well, and just connecting with people all over the world. I feel most alive when I am doing that. So I honestly feel like that's it. That's all I really need.
What do you feel has been the most liberating thing for you in making this choice of not having children?
That I can create whatever life I want. When we have children, there is certain things that you need to do with your life. I mean, generally, kids have to go to school, hopefully. That means you are pretty much set in a location for a decent amount of time. I mean, there are things that your life will look like. And that this is the kind of, I guess, the vision that we're given is you have kids, they go to school, they grow up, they get married, you then become grandparents, and then this cycle continues and so on and so on. So, and it's like, okay, that's one way to live. Yes. But I appreciate that because I haven't had children, I can create another path. I can focus on myself. I can focus on my community. I can help people in another way. I'm not just looking after one child. I can really spread the love, energy, time into maybe other people's children, like, my nephews and my community and things like that. So I really have loved being able to just think outside of the box and go, what kind of life would I like to have? And obviously, yeah, there's still things that you have to think about. And as a person without kids, when we grow older, we're going to need more of that community around us because our systems are kind of set to have children looking after their parents. And there is that kind of, idea of that's how our social systems work. Kids take on that burden. And when you choose a different path, you are going to have to iron out a few kinks of how do we do this? And that can be very, very daunting to a lot of people. I get it. And I've been there. But it can also be incredibly liberating and freeing to say, I can do whatever I want. Really, I can do whatever I want. I've always loved that. I want every day to be different because that's just my nature. And with this decision, I really can make every day different if I want. So, which I know to some people will be like a nightmare, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But to me, that's my happy place.
That's your extraordinary life. I love it. So I, with my husband, moved into a tiny house. We lived there for 2 years. And I'm curious to hear about your experience sort of downsizing and living minimal and in close quarters. And I think you also work with your husband on this project, correct? So tell us a little bit about what that experience has been like and how it's impacted your relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big change. Going from an apartment in Berlin, we had a really big apartment. I had my home studio there, like loads of equipment. I built that up over like 10, 12 years. And, every shoot I would buy another thing to work on the next shoot and like to learn and to grow. So that I had a real kind of like emotional tie to these things because moving to Berlin allowed me to really become a photographer. And getting rid of that stuff was probably the most scary because it was like, wow, I'm now changing my identity almost. But, the reality is once we sold 99% of that stuff, you quickly adjust, or I quickly adjusted. As long as I have my core things, which are my laptop to be able to create and connect with people, my camera to be able to go and take those photos of child-free folks and landscapes and, good coffee, a couple of vests, a couple of pairs of jeans. Like you whittle everything down and you're like, now I'm like, wow, you really don't need a lot to be happy. It's just you get used to buying stuff. And I did that, before Berlin. We lived in London for 6 years and I would go out every lunchtime almost and go and buy something. I think probably to make myself feel better about having to, commute on the tube every day and like it's like it's just autopilot again and like needing to like live up to these expectations of what society is telling you need to do. And now I've got, like I said, a tiny little cupboard of clothing and we are literally in the smallest space. I mean, this is a pretty big van, but it's still, people lose their mind when we tell them we're doing this. And, working together, we have always worked together. Before We Are Childfree, we had a blog in Berlin. James is an incredible writer. So I would be the photographer and the videographer. James would do the writing. And we combined our skills together. And we've always done these extra, outside of our day jobs, we did these, I guess, passion projects. Because that was kind of where our heart was in doing these things. And We got used to working together a lot then. We've been together 23 years. We know, each other's warts and all. Like we can do that part, no problem, actually.
Thank you so much, Zoe, for your time, for being here, and for all the passion that you put into your work. I know that you have certainly impacted me, and I know that you're impacting many other women and men around the world and in this grappling with this choice and this lifestyle.
Oh.
So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. That means a lot, really.